Welcome to this explainer. Today we're exploring how one of the greatest minds in history didn't start with loud declarations, but with profound stillness. We're going to dive right into the life of Isaac Newton, uncovering the extraordinary power of quiet observation and what happens when someone is willing to just simply pay attention to the world around them.
So how did one quiet mind uncover the hidden rules of the entire universe? How do you go from being a lonely kid in the 1600s to literally mapping out the absolute laws that govern our cosmos? That massive leap, from a quiet beginning to those universe-shattering discoveries, is exactly what makes this explainer so incredibly fascinating to dive into.
All right, Chapter 1, A Quiet, Unexpected Beginning. We're starting back in 1642 in the small farming village of Woolsthorpe.
To really picture this, his mother said he was born tiny enough to fit inside a large cup. Think about that. His father had already passed away before he was born, and his mom actually left when he was just 3, so he grew up a pretty lonely boy. Instead of running around playing loudly outside with the other kids, he was the kind of kid who preferred sitting quietly in the corner. He'd make these little windmills, build paper kites, and just watch how the shadows fell.
Moving right along to Chapter 2, The Extraordinary Plague Years.
Now this is wild. By 1665, Newton was a university student at Cambridge, but then a devastating global event, the Great Plague, forced the whole school to shut down. So he retreats back to Woolsthorpe. And it sounds totally counterintuitive, right? But this terrible disruption actually created the perfect environment for his genius to just explode. Returning to the stillness of the countryside, he had nearly 2 full years completely free to just wander the cool forests. No professors telling him what to think, just pure time to ask unprecedented questions.
And wow, did he ask questions. During those 2 years of deep, patient solitude, he made 3 absolute game-changing breakthroughs. We're talking discoveries about light, mathematics, and the heavens that no human being had ever made before. He used a simple glass prism to prove white light is actually made of many colors. He created an entirely new branch of math, and he started piecing together the very fabric of how the universe is held together.
He called that new math the method of fluxions. Today, well, you probably know it as calculus. He literally had to invent a brand new language of mathematics just to describe the changing reality he was observing. He needed a way to map the constant dynamic movements of the physical world. So what does he do? He just sits down and builds the tool himself. Absolutely incredible.
Which brings us to Chapter 3, The Apple and the Pole.
So we've all heard the famous story, right? A simple event in a calm garden that changes human history forever. But let's look closer. When an apple fell from a branch above him, he didn't just watch it hit the ground and go about his day. He stopped. He really paid attention. He asked the golden question. Why did the apple fall down and not up or sideways? He realized there had to be something invisible and incredibly powerful, actively pulling that object straight toward the earth.
And that answer, of course, was gravity. His monumental realization was that the exact same invisible force pulling that little apple down to the grass is the exact same force holding the moon and the massive planets in their continuous orbits. It's just a profoundly beautiful idea, simple enough to notice in a backyard garden, but enormous enough to govern the entire cosmos.
Let's look at Chapter 4, Unlocking the Universe's Rules.
So, when the plague finally ends, Newton heads back to Cambridge, but he's a completely transformed man. He becomes a professor at just 26, builds the first reflecting telescope using mirrors, and slowly starts writing down all these massive ideas he'd been keeping to himself. And then we hit 1687. This is an absolute watershed moment for human knowledge. After years of slow, super cautious preparation, he publishes his masterpiece, the Principia. Sure, it was a dense, complex book written in Latin, but the ideas inside, they fundamentally transformed our entire understanding of the physical world. Through 3 simple laws of motion, he basically took the mystery out of the universe. Tides, thrown stones, planetary orbits, he proved they all follow the same beautiful mathematical order. He took a universe that felt unpredictable and turned it into a deeply ordered system we could actually calculate and understand.
Now let's pivot a bit to Chapter 5, The Man Beyond the Math.
Because to really understand Newton in this explainer, we have to look past the famous formulas. He wasn't just some calculating machine. He was complex, deeply private, and honestly, a pretty stubborn guy with very few close friends. His brilliance certainly didn't protect him from human ego. Take his bitter, years-long rivalry with Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. They both independently developed calculus, but instead of celebrating a joint triumph, they got locked in this painful dispute over who discovered it first. It just goes to show that even unparalleled genius isn't immune to a good old-fashioned human feud.
We also get a glimpse of his deep search for meaning in his hidden parallel passions. It's kind of ironic, right? The father of modern physics was secretly obsessed with alchemy, literally spending years trying to turn base metals into gold, and right alongside that, he was intensely studying theology.
He wasn't just after scientific facts. He was desperately trying to uncover the perfect intelligence and hidden order he firmly believed existed behind all things.
In his later years, he finally stepped out of the shadows. He moved to London, took on these massive public roles. He became master of the Royal Mint, where he actively fought counterfeit money, and he served as president of the Royal Society for 24 years. Queen Anne even knighted him in 1705. He became this highly revered public figure. But at his core, he really remained that same quiet thinker, eventually passing away peacefully in a sleep at 84 years old in 1727.
Which leads us to Chapter 6, Standing on the Shoulders of Giants.
Despite all that incredible global fame, and eventually being buried in the highly honored Westminster Abbey alongside monarchs, Newton viewed his own massive legacy with a really profound humility. His mindset is captured perfectly in his own famous words: "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." He didn't view himself as the absolute beginning of all knowledge, not at all. He saw himself as a curious traveler on a continuing journey, building directly on the great work of thinkers who came before him, like Galileo, Kepler, and Descartes.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this to think about. What will you choose to pay attention to on your own learning journey? Just like Newton's, your journey begins with a simple, quiet act of curiosity. It starts that very second you stop, look at the world around you, and just ask why. So, what will you notice next?